Mike Bobo is not the primary problem for Georgia's offense. Kirby Smart is.
Locked On presents The Portal, the daily podcast covering college football recruiting and everything NIL. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back into the Portal Podcast, where you get your daily recruiting, NIL, and transfer portal scoop. I'm your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football recruiting analyst. Thank you for making the Portal Podcast a part of your day, each and every day, right here on the nation's #1 sports podcasting network, Locked On. It is all things Georgia Bulldogs today, and in particular, we're going to be talking about a very sore subject among many Bulldogs fans. Mike Bobo, I don't think he's the same problem that a lot of Georgia fans think that he is. I'll explain that here in just a moment, but other things. Gunner Stockton, he's better than people think. But what does he need to do to develop? All of that will be centralized in this podcast. Definitely going to talk about my guy, Juan Gaston. He's one of my favorite players in college football, regardless of position. And if you do not know who Juan Gaston is, you soon will, and you should. It is not very often the guys that weigh 350 and above move like Juan Gaston. He is not a normal human being. O-line, D-line. Kirby Smart prioritizes. Definitely going to be talking about that and the Georgia schedule. It's going to be a little bit easier this year. They've got a much clearer path to the college football playoff, to a possible SEC title, and more. All of that on today's show. But again, to start, the debate about let's get rid of Mike Bobo, this, that, and the other. It's all his fault is garbage. Complete and utter garbage. The biggest thing that is hindering Georgia is the guy at the top with one category. He's still an elite coach. That is not debatable. However, the numbers do not lie. Georgia is not bad at throwing to the middle of the field and challenging. They are horrendous. Down the field, are you ready? Are you ready for the numbers for Gunner Stockton? And we'll explain why here momentarily, but you got to hear the actual statistical data that just kind of makes you wonder if it is possible, even remotely possible, to figure out if they can throw the ball and be consistent. They're going to have to do better. All right. Middle of the field last year, just 10 yards or so. It's not that bad. Actually, pretty good. He hit 2/3 of his passes, 26 of 39, 479 yards, 5 TDs, still 3 interceptions, but it is a difficult area. You're over the linebackers in front of the safeties. Okay. Deep third, middle of the field, horrendous. 7 of 23, 30.4%, 182 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interception, NFL passer rating of 38.7. Whoa, that is insanity because they have good receivers. They lost Zachariah Branch. They lost Colby Young. They lost Dylan Bell. None of those guys are walking through the door again. But that doesn't mean you can't do better. And the reason they don't is because they don't practice it. They just want to play bully ball too much, screen teams to death, use tight ends underneath, mitigate risk. And then when you have to throw it further down the field, and yes, that also includes those occasional end of half, Hail Marys, those kinds of things, your stats are going to be bad. Again, end of this season, 14 games for Gunner, 7 of 23, 30.4%, 182 yards on deep shots. When you play elite teams, Bama, SEC title game, Ole Miss, Oklahoma, whatever it is, and you go out there and you can't throw to the deep third of the field in the middle. They were okay on the outside to a certain degree, but for some reason it's not working there. That makes it really easy for those safeties to start widening out if you're not hitting those plays. And then in big games, when you're going against the elite safeties, teams can take away the perimeter receivers, tight ends, running backs on wheel routes, whatever it may be. They have to figure it out, and that starts with practice. I love the fact that they bang a lot, maybe as much or not more, than any team in college football. But if Georgia's going to win another title under Kirby Smart, he must adjust his conservative nature. He must adjust his stubbornness to want to push the football to the middle of the field. And they got a deep receiver room. We'll get into the questions about them in a second, along with Juan Gaston and everything else. But again, this is not a Mike Bobo problem, at least not individually. He is the OC. but your quarterback is terrible as a fourth-year player at throwing the ball down the field, the middle. Like, that's the easiest one. It's just straight down the middle. 30.4%, that is a coaching problem that starts at the very top, period. Now, the roster for this year, I'm still surprised. Very few people are actually picking Georgia to win it in 2026, and I think that is a mistake because that's the only area that I really say, you know what, he's not doing a very good job there. And he's not, but that's one pinpoint area. That's one. You just get rid of a few of the screens, and I think part of the reason for that last year was Branch was so good at it. You get a few of those and a little bit more down the field, you should be fine. Unfortunately, this past season, again, this is a fact, 7.5 yards per passing attempt. That's what Gunner Stockton averaged. Those screens, the lack of deep ball, especially in the middle of the field, that's a problem. But he still threw for over 3,000 yards. You know, or right at it, right, because 2,900, whatever it was. He had plenty of yardage, but he wasn't good in some of the clutch moments. They didn't trust him against some of the better defenses. You have to adjust your coaching on that. But listen to the wide receiver unit. Just if you're a Georgia fan, or even if you just follow recruiting in the South, they're not experienced at UGA, but they are guys that have played a lot of reps. Isaiah Canion comes over from Georgia Tech, very fast, athletic kid, over 6 foot. I think he could be their leading receiver. It's possible. London Humphreys, a kid that had a good year a few years ago at Vandy. This will be his third year at UGA. Another kid that can really run. Jacoby White-Helton, he's got speed. He's got elusiveness. C.J. Wiley and Talon Taylor, 2 kids from last year that were freshmen. They also have Elias Williams, who's one of the freakiest players in college football, regardless of position. You could put him at defensive end. You could put him at tight end. You can call him whatever you want. He's 6'6", 6'7". He may be the most gifted guy on the roster. I would still go, we'll talk about that in a second. He's top 3 conservatively. Lawson Lucky, Ethan Barbour, like they've got guys to throw to, but none of them are coming back after like a 50-catch season. Like they just got a ton of inexperience. Again, they lost Dylan Bell, they lost Zachariah Branch, and they lost Colby Young. That's a big chunk of change. Okay, that doesn't mean you can't throw it. And it's going to be challenging for Kirby's style of play because their running back room is grotesque. I think that it is as good as there is in the country between the tackles with their top 2 backs. Nate Frazier is definitely a guy that probably ends up being a multi-year NFL running back. I think he'll turn pro after this year. I don't know if I want to say that for sure, but most likely. And then Chauncey Bowens is even a bigger version, a little more power. Another guy that's a third-year player. He's a redshirt sophomore. Frazier's true junior at Georgia. That's the best in between the tackles guys. And with their O-line, Drew Bobo, Dontrell Glover, and Juan Gaston from center, right guard to right tackle again. Drew Bobo, yes, coordinator's son. Dontrell Glover, Juan Gaston, center to the right tackle is as good as it gets in college football. You're going to see some power. You're going to see some power and some gap coming around. By the way, Glover and Gaston coming around from the right side to the left on GT, oh boy. Good luck to teams. I think that will be as good a play as, I know it's generic, but as good a play as UGA has. Will it be Ernest Green? Can he stay healthy? My guy Brooks Austin said to me in a text that I got a text from him the other day while I was on the show, and I'm like, hey, who's going to be the other tackle with Juan? And is Juan going to play right or left or whatever? And he said, whatever you got to take the following consideration. He said, Green will not stay healthy. He's never stayed healthy. There's going to be a third tackle. And on his show, Film Guy Network that he does from 8 to 10 every night, he talked about that again last night. There's going to be a third tackle. Michael Uni, that's another kid. He's a left guard. He could be really, really good. Left tackle is the only real question. They lost a guy early to the draft, so that's a big deal. But with that run game, you have no excuse to not want to take some more shots because there should be, technically, plenty of safeties creeping up towards the line. Will they do that? I'm not 100% convinced yet, but to that end, it's the missing piece for Georgia. The run game will be top 5 in the SEC, and I'm being very conservative, maybe the best in terms of a pure traditional sense, running back, fullback, or, 2 tight ends or 10 look, whatever you want. Their running back room is gross. Dowdell was like, he would start at probably half the SEC schools. He's third team at Georgia at best. They are loaded at running back. So teams are going to have to pick their poison, because while that group is very, very inexperienced at receiver, you got a graduate student now at quarterback. There's no excuses. They need to be able to throw the ball vertically. And again, specifically in the middle of the field, that's the easy one. I don't understand that. You should be able to hit a few big post plays. They didn't even have 200 yards passing in the deep third in 14 games. That's almost impossible. But Georgia did it despite their talent. When we come back, we're going to talk about Juan Gaston and why Georgia's O-line, D-line group, the combination, it's probably as good, if not better, than any in the country. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Robinhood. What if sports were traded like markets? Now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house. It's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood prediction markets change the game. It's people moving the action. So when momentum shifts, you move with it. You always knew the game, but never had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. Now, actually take part live in a market powered by people. You're no longer just a spectator, play-by-play. You decide. Trade every play with Robinhood. Now available across the United States. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. Futured and cleared swaps trading involves significant risk. It is not appropriate for everyone. Event contracts are offered by Robinhood Derivatives, LLC, a registered futures commission, merchant, and swap firm. Check out the Everydayer Club in the link down below in the description. It will give you more details, but if you use code MARCH, you get your first month free. Get your pods on the go with no ads. Check out the Everydayer Club. All right. I have said it a couple of times in some other shows, and since we're featuring the University of Georgia football program today, I'm just going to say it. Out of all the blessed opportunities I've had to scout kids in my lifetime, there may not be a more gifted big man offensive tackle that I've ever watched than Juan Gaston. It's like, okay, what's the deal? Not this past January, but the one before, right at the beginning of the new year. Under Armour always has their All-American game down in the Orlando area. We get to go to the practices and everything else, and there were just a bunch of huge guys. Juan was a senior, had a chance to talk to him a little bit, and I'd seen him a couple of times at the Under Armour camp in Atlanta. He's a kid that grew up on the west side of Atlanta, same high school as Cam Newton, and he was just big, but he hadn't really redefined his body or anything else, blah, 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 and he just kept getting bigger. And when I saw Juan walk out onto the field, I'm like, man, he's overweight. He's really big, but he doesn't look fluffy. Like, he's just so wide. I'm curious how he bends, how he moves and all that. Talked to him a little bit, soft-spoken guy, easygoing. And I asked him, I said, Juan, what do you weigh? What's your size? He told me 6'8", which I believe he is gigantic. And just to be clear, 388, as in 388 pounds. And when he said that, I'm like, holy moly. Then I thought to myself, there's no way this guy's going to be able to play tackle. Not against these guys. We're at the All-American game. This is the best of the best. He was awesome. He was as good as anybody there at pass protection. At 388 pounds. That's what I knew Georgia, who had pegged him early, like going into his sophomore year, that was their guy in that class. That this is what Georgia does. They do a great job of recruiting. Hats off to Kirby's staff in totality for that. He went out there and dominated. He was obviously in run blocking. Good luck if you're one-on-one with him. That's not a good time. But the way he bent, the way he could change directions, the way Juan could kick step, or the way Juan Gaston could change directions if a guy did a counter move, you name it. Now he is the right tackle for Georgia. And he played and started some games last year. But there's a chance we're talking about starter. We're talking about a guy that has a chance to be a top 5 pick. And he's still got, at minimum, 2 seasons to play before he can turn pro. You got to be 3 years removed from high school to leave for the National Football League. Georgia's O-line, again, center is the OC's son. Right guard is a guy, Glover, that came in the same class. He's a sophomore as well. He's awesome. He's a guard, kid I know from the greater Atlanta area. And then on top of it, you've got Big Juan. That will be as good a group as there is. And third down and short this year, I don't know what the numbers were for the Dogs. I'm telling you, that's going to be gross. If Uni or somebody else figures out at left guard and hopefully they can keep Ernest healthy, Jackson and some other guys, they've got plenty of talent. They're about 10 deep on the O-line. If they figure that out, I'm just going to say it once again. There is no excuse for the combination of Kirby Smart and Coach Bobo not to figure out the deep passing game, and in particular in the deep third. They were really bad at it last year. That is the missing link to their offense. We know he can throw it deep. Like one of the best passes the entire 2025 season was that fourth down throw that Gunner had against Tennessee to beat him. I mean, you couldn't have walked up there and just dropped it in the guy's lap any better. He can throw it. You must give him confidence. You must practice it much more. And then they've got young, talented receivers. They have recruited it pretty well. They're going to have to step up. I don't know if it's Jacoby White, whoever it is, CJ Wiley, whatever. Ethan Barbour is a tight end that can stretch the field. Elias Williams is the freakiest kid in your receiving and or tight end room. Plenty of options. Let it take care of itself. It'll percolate. It'll end up being good. But the O-line for Georgia, if it's not top 5 nationally this year, win. And why wouldn't it be? You got a probable top 10 pick at right tackle. Left tackle is a guy who gets banged up a lot, but he was another kid that was elite coming out of high school. There's no reason for Georgia not to be elite up front. There just isn't one. On the defensive line, it could be more grotesque, which is sickening. If you do not know the name Elijah Griffin, shame on you, but you will. At that same Under Armour situation when he came in last year, the only guy that I thought was better than Juan was Elijah. I thought he was the best player there, period, because D linemen can have such an impact on the game. He was the one guy that just didn't matter. 280, give or take, and he was twitchy like a 220-pound guy. And I'm not kidding. Insane. To that end, he's a second-year player. More steps in terms of the mental reps, understanding film within the scheme. They run a 3-man/4-man line. It's kind of a hybrid, more of a 4-2-5 than anything else anymore. But whatever you want to say, I think Georgia will be really good up front. But it starts with Elijah Griffin, and to a point where when you get up, even though they got other NFL guys up front now, I'm not saying they don't, because they 100% do. Amaris Williams transfers in from Auburn. That's a guy that's, holy cow, super talented, super twitchy. You put those guys on the ends on 3rd and 8, boy, good luck. They got a lot of guys up front. I don't even know where to start. Just depends on who's healthy, but they're 8 or 9 deep with guys that have a chance to at least make it to NFL training camps. This could be as good a front 7 as there is, because I think their 1-2 punch of Raylan Wilson and Chris Cole, who will also be a pass rusher. He went and trained this offseason with a guy, and that's another story, but he's not going to play just inside back. He's going to move around. That front 7, in my opinion, is the best in college football. They're going to be a handful. Now, just to put it into even further perspective, I don't think Raylan Wilson and Chris Cole are NFL players. I think they're NFL starters, and relatively quickly in their NFL careers. DB group, Ellis Robinson, DeMello Jones at corner, going to be one of the better units in the SEC. Need to figure out some depth, but they've got plenty of guys. Rashawn Dinkins is a guy they think is going to be the next great one. He's just kind of figuring it out. He's a young player, so there's a little risk there, but he's very talented. KJ Bolden's a guy I remember all the way back from his sophomore year of high school. This will be his 3rd and final year of college football. He's one of the best safeties. Really, really, really talented. I don't think there's any way that you're going to see Georgia have any issues on the defensive side of the ball. You're just not. They have way too much talent. That'll take care of itself. The only thing that can trip them up is the same answer for every team, and that's injury. They're one of the deepest units. They played a very young unit, just overall from defensive front, mid-level at the linebackers, and the safeties and corners in the secondary. Now majority of those guys are back. They're going to be just fine. So when we come back, we're going to talk about Georgia's schedule. Oh, did the Dogs get a break? That is next, right here on the Portal Podcast. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, the NBA playoffs are here, where every possession matters, every matchup is magnified, and every game can swing a series. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers a great way to get in on all the NBA playoff action. Here's what you should like about it. You can use the FanDuel app to keep up with everything that's going on with the player stats, the trends, the matchups. You just kind of look at it throughout the season. Hey, how do these teams play against each other earlier this year? Do you take that into account? Whatever it may be. And you can bet just $5 and get $250 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. That's a pretty good ratio. It makes the entire playoff experience more fun using the FanDuel app. So make sure you check it out. Head over to FanDuel.com to get started. FanDuel, play your game. All right, let's talk a little bit about the Georgia schedule. Last year, pretty tough. They played Texas and some other teams during the regular season the last few years that aren't natural, but the SEC's, to their credit, has branded things a little bit differently. Now it rotates. You don't know from year to year how it's going to work. Let me give you an example. A&M last year, their schedule was much easier than several others. Certainly easier than like what Florida's was completely. For Georgia, I don't know if it's quite as easy as a few of the others the last couple of years, but it's not far from it. So let's dive in. This is just shockingly different, like totally. They got Tennessee State and Western Kentucky to start the year. Those are dubs, obviously. To start the SEC, they play arguably the weakest team in the league, Arkansas, on the road. If you're going to waste a road game somewhere, Arkansas is perfect. You're going to bury them by the beginning of the third quarter. Oklahoma, though, okay, things get real. Game 4, that stuff I was talking about with Georgia's ability to knock it out, for lack of a better term, down the field. You got to be able to hit Oklahoma down the field because they're going to pressure you. They're going to play man. They're going to show a ton of fronts. If you do not have some man beaters and just guys hitting on 50-50 plays, Oklahoma is a bear anyway. But if you don't do that, trying to go 12 plays against that defense over and over against that defensive front, Jaden Jackson in particular is one of my favorite D linemen in college football. Good luck to you. Vanderbilt is the next week. It's another home game like Oklahoma. I have no idea what to expect from Vanderbilt's offense. I really don't. You're probably going to have Jared Curtis at quarterback, who was committed to Georgia not once but twice, so that's the Jared Curtis game. I have a feeling they're going to want to kill that kid, like just bury him in every way possible. Not like kill him, but you know what I'm saying, like maim him. Good luck to that. Then it happens, the game that everybody likes to watch. Bama hosts Georgia. That's probably the only game that I think they will be underdogs in, unless it's Ole Miss. We'll talk about that in a second. That is October 10th. And it will be their 6th consecutive game. That's a lot. That is really a lot. Once you get to 6 teams, I don't care how much talent they have, that is a lot to handle. They don't get a bye then either. The next week they host Auburn. The longest standing rivalry in the South is not Auburn versus Alabama, it's Auburn versus Georgia. October 17th, they will host Auburn between the hedges. They finally get their bye week, the 24th of October, and then they play Florida. It is a neutral site game. I believe this year it's in Atlanta. Correct me if I'm wrong in the chat, but nonetheless, Florida, it's a new staff. We really don't even know who the quarterback's going to be. They should be better on the O-line, probably more consistent in the secondary. They couldn't be much more inconsistent, especially considering how much talent Florida has lined up back there and squandered it. But you still got to like Georgia. They're just better coached until otherwise proven. The next game, November 7th, this is the other possible game where they might be an underdog. Possibly. We'll see how the year goes. The Ole Miss Rebels in Oxford. They lost to Ole Miss in the playoff last year. They're going to want to get them back. It's on the road. That's going to be a wild game. It's a tough 2-game stretch right there. You got your arch rival, Florida. Then you got the team that beat you in the playoff last year, but you got to go to their place. That's rough. The next week, it's Missouri. That's kind of a sneaky game after 2 tough physical games against the Gators and the Rebels, but it's at home. You go to South Carolina, a team that you don't know what you're going to get. Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, yeah, it's one of those deals. South Carolina could be anything. Lenora Sellers Still, the quarterback, I need to see their O-line be able to handle anything close to Georgia, let alone what the Dogs have, though. I'll take Georgia by 2 touchdowns. And then at the end of the year, they, of course, play Georgia Tech, their annual rival. So, again, Ole Miss on the road and Alabama on the road are the only 2 games they're likely to be an underdog. They still have Oklahoma at home. Okay. They got Florida, neutral site. They got South Carolina on the road. They got Missouri. Okay. They're at home. Georgia Tech, that's at home. Like, does anybody really think that Georgia's not going to be a 10-win team, barring, again, just massive injuries? I think their FanDuel over-under is 9.5. I think it's fair to think that they could go under it if everything went wrong. You know, the ball just bounces the wrong way, deflections, defensive touchdowns against you, goofy stuff like that. But I think there's a higher propensity for Georgia to go 11-1 than I do 9-3. Now, we're just talking about regular season, not the SEC title or the national championship. But still, if you're 10-2 or better kind of team, you can't really complain that much. Thank you once again for checking out the Portal Podcast. We are here every day and just talking football, talking recruiting, talking transfer portal, NIL. Make sure you hit that like, hit that subscribe. If you're on Apple, please give us a 5-star review. Check out the Everydayer Club. This has been the Portal Podcast.